The first time you find a fallen empire in Stellaris, that ancient civilization that built their galactic empire before your species learned to smell iron, the game does something most strategy games don't. It makes you feel genuinely small. That feeling is worth something. The question is whether now is the right moment for it. Stellaris is a real-time grand strategy game by Paradox Interactive. You build an interstellar empire, colonizing planets, directing diplomacy, managing research and populations across hundreds of in-game years. If you've played Masters of Orion, Space Empires, or any of the 4X space strategy games from the 1990s and early 2000s, Stellaris is where that lineage went. It is a game people describe as starting at 8 and looking up to find it is 2 o'clock in the morning. That is not a flaw, it's the design. The 10-minute test is a framework introduced in an earlier video. 4 questions, answerable before you commit a session. Together, they tell you whether a game is right for the kind of time you actually have, not whether it is a good game. Stellaris is an excellent game, but the test has something to say about it. The first question is about the unit of play. What is the natural session unit in this game? Is there a run that ends, a mission that completes, an in-game day that turns over? Or does the game simply continue until you impose your own ending? In Stellaris, there is no clean unit. A game runs for hundreds of in-game years. There is no chapter break, no turn cycle, no run structure. You play until you decide to stop, which means every session ends mid-thing, mid-war, mid-research queue, mid-diplomatic crisis. The game is always in the middle of something because it is always building towards something that never fully resolves. In the early game, this is easy to miss. The first few hours of Stellaris are naturally contained. You're exploring nearby systems, making first contact with alien civilizations, establishing early colonies. Each event feels like a self-contained beat. The session ability problem is not visible yet, because the game has not yet revealed how much it expects you to hold on to in your head at the same time. It will, and that is the unit of play answer. Whenever time you have, you'll almost always put it down feeling like you interrupted something rather than completed it. The second question is what you lose when a session goes badly. Not a loss to the game mechanics, a loss to the session itself. A war you did not see coming. A crisis event that detonates mid-session when you have no time left to resolve it. Or a fleet decision that cascades into something you cannot resolve in the time that you have. In narrow terms, Stellaris handles failure manageably. In normal play, saving is generous. Losing a fleet is painful but rarely fatal. Losing a war usually sets you back without ending your campaign. But a Stellaris campaign represents something different from a run in a shorter game. It represents dozens of hours of accumulated decisions. When that save file is at stake, when a session going badly means permanent consequences to that investment, the cost of failure is not just the session, it is everything that came before it. A single session going badly is recoverable, but a save file representing dozens of hours of investment is not the same as a run, and consequences in a long campaign are permanent. The stakes therefore grow as you do. The third question is how hard it is to return after a break, not after 5 minutes, after a proper gap. How much do you need to reconstruct before you can actually play? Coming back to Stellaris after some weeks means rebuilding a picture that has dozens of components. Where are your fleets and what were they doing? What is your current research priority and why? Which empire is a credible threat? Is there a crisis developing on the galactic stage that you were managing before you stopped? Most of that state is findable in the interface. The game records everything, and nothing decays while you're away. The cost is not that the information is gone, the cost is that recovering it takes time out of the session. An hour to reconstruct a complex late-game campaign before you can make decisions confidently is not unusual. For anyone without 2 hours to spare, the re-entry time has consumed the session before play even begins. This is where Stellaris fails the 10-minute test most clearly. The re-entry cost is high for any complex save, and late-game saves are all complex saves. Reconstructing a complex campaign before you can play confidently is not a cost most sessions can carry. The fourth question is whether the game's demand grows over time. Not whether the game gets harder, whether it asks more of each session as you progress. Early Stellaris, the first 2 to 5 hours, is absorbing and manageable. You're expanding into a mostly empty galaxy, making first contact, placing early colonies, running a research queue that fits comfortably on one screen. Sessions are naturally engaging and easy to contain. Late Stellaris is a different kind of task. You're managing dozens of planets, hundreds of populations, multiple active fleets, ongoing wars, faction demands, and potentially an endgame crisis that is reorganizing everything. The game's complexity is compounded. Sessions that felt absorbing in the early hours are maintenance operations later, and maintenance operations at the scale of Stellaris need proper time to be worth starting. The demand in a late campaign is significantly higher than in Hour 5. That trajectory is the honest answer to this question. The game grows more expensive to maintain as it develops, not less. This means that by mid-campaign, a session under 2 hours risks confusion more than progress. The verdict then is wait. Not because Stellaris is a poor game, it is extraordinary. Finding a fallen empire, surviving a crisis that reorganizes the entire galaxy, these are experiences that most strategy games cannot touch. The verdict is not about quality, it is about fit. 3 of the 4 questions return a fail or a heavy conditional. There is no natural session unit, the re-entry cost is too high for short windows, the session demand in late game significantly exceeds what most sessions can absorb. Therefore, you should treat Stellaris as a weekend start, and a serious one at that. Begin it when you have a proper first session, and only if you can realistically return to it before the thread goes cold. The verdict reverses under specific conditions. If your current routine includes several sessions per week, sessions of 2 to 3 hours, and the ability to sustain a campaign across months without weeks-long gaps, Stellaris is a serious recommendation. It's precisely the kind of game this channel exists to help you find the right moment for. If that does not describe your current sessions, and for most viewers on most sessions it will not, file it honestly. Come back when you have room for it. The worst version of Stellaris is a campaign that sits half-built for 3 months, because the sessions it needs are not available, and you return each time confused and unable to build momentum. That is how a genuinely excellent game becomes permanent backlog weight. If the space strategy itch is there, but the time isn't, Stellaris is not the answer. Try FTL, which you've already put through this same test, is a run, not a campaign. Clear session unit, lower re-entry costs, stable demand. If you want scale and decision-making without maintenance, it earns the session you have. Stellaris is not a game you fit around your life. It is a game you make room for. That is what the 10-minute test is for, telling you whether conditions are right before you commit.